My name's Daniel, and until last year I worked for a mid-sized logistics company that liked to pretend it was a Fortune 500 powerhouse. On paper, it looked impressive. Shiny office building, mission statements plastered on the walls, and a CEO who loved to talk about innovation and culture. But inside, it was chaos held together with duct tape, overworked employees, and a management team that thought bullying counted as leadership. I'd been there for 6 years. Long enough to know the cracks in the system, long enough to know which fires could be ignored and which ones would burn the building down if we didn't handle them. My job was operations coordinator, which meant I was the guy who quietly bent the rules just enough to make sure things actually worked. For example, shipments technically had to go through 3 layers of approval before leaving the warehouse. In reality, if I waited for all 3 signatures, half our clients would cancel their contracts. So, I'd pre-approve things. Nobody complained, because I kept the money flowing. Or our outdated scheduling system. According to company policy, all shifts had to be logged manually in a clunky software from the early 2000s. In practice, I used spreadsheets and color codes because it was 10 times faster. Again, nobody objected, because trucks rolled out on time. Basically, I was the glue. The guy who made sure the rules didn't strangle us. But then a new manager arrived. His name was Victor, though everyone quickly started calling him Dictator Vic. Fresh suit, corporate jargon for days, and a permanent smirk like he was the smartest guy in any room. On his first week, he gathered us in the break room and announced, "From now on, everything will be done by the book. No shortcuts. No improvisation. We follow the rules exactly. That's how we build discipline." A couple of my co-workers exchanged uneasy glances. Everyone knew that if we actually followed the rulebook to the letter, this place would collapse within a week. But Victor wasn't interested in hearing that. He wanted control. He wanted obedience. So, I smiled, nodded, and thought to myself, "All right, boss. You want the rules? You'll get the rules." And that was the beginning of the end. The very next morning, Victor sent a company-wide email with the subject line, "Strict compliance starts today." He even attached a scanned PDF of the employee handbook like it was some sacred scripture. The message was clear: no bending, no shortcuts, no exceptions. Every decision had to match policy word for word. I read the email 3 times, sipping my coffee, and honestly, I laughed. If he wanted to play this game, fine. I'd play it better than anyone. That day, the first test came almost immediately. A delivery truck showed up at the warehouse an hour early, as they often did. Normally, I'd let them unload right away, sign the paperwork myself, and get them moving. It saved time for everyone. But according to the handbook, trucks could only be unloaded at their scheduled slot, and only a supervisor could sign the intake. So I crossed my arms and told the driver, "Sorry, rules are rules. You'll have to wait." He looked at me like I'd grown 2 heads. "Dude, I'm literally just trying to drop this off." "Company policy," I replied with a smile. The driver swore under his breath and stormed back to his cab. He sat there for 59 minutes until the clock hit his official slot. By then, 3 more trucks had pulled in, and the parking lot looked like a game of Tetris about to spill over. Warehouse staff glared at me like I'd lost my mind. One of them whispered, "Dan, just sign it, man, or we'll be here all night." I pointed at the handbook sitting on the desk. Not my call anymore. Orders from Victor. By noon, we were already behind schedule. Clients were calling, asking why their shipments hadn't left yet. Normally, I'd juggle things, fast-track the urgent orders, and smooth it all out. But nope, the handbook clearly stated that orders had to be processed in the order they were received. So that's exactly what I did. A VIP client who usually paid double for priority shipping? Their order sat untouched while we processed smaller accounts first. Another client called me directly, furious. I just forwarded them to Victor's extension. By the end of day one, we had trucks idling, clients screaming, and half the staff ready to riot. And Victor. He strutted around like a peacock, telling everyone how proud he was that the system was finally working as intended. Oh, it was working all right. Working toward disaster. And I was just getting started. Day 2 was when the real cracks started to show. Normally, I'd spend the first hour clearing bottlenecks, checking emails, approving overtime, shifting people where they were most needed. Kept things balanced. But the handbook? It had an entire section on overtime authorization. According to policy, overtime required 3 levels of written approval: manager, HR, and finance. No verbal agreements, no retroactive fixes. So when the warehouse lead came to me at 9 a.m. saying, "Dan, we need 3 extra guys to stay late or this shipment won't get out," I smiled and handed him a copy of the rulebook. Fill out the form, send it to HR, then finance. Should only take, 2 business days. His jaw nearly hit the floor. 2 days. The trucks are here now. I shrugged. Not my problem. Victor wants strict compliance. By noon, I had 27 emails flagged as urgent. Half of them were clients, half were internal staff begging for me to bend the rules just a little. My reply was copy-paste. Per company policy, I am unable to proceed without full approvals. Please direct further questions to Mr. Victor, last name. Oh, and the documentation. That was the real comedy show. See, the handbook demanded that every single shipment have a physical paper trail, signed intake, stamped release, carbon copy invoices. Normally, I digitize everything and push it through. But hey, Victor wanted the book. So I made sure every form was printed, stapled, and walked by hand from one department to another. By 3 p.m., the accounting office looked like a blizzard of paperwork had hit it. One of the accountants poked her head into my office, eyes wide. "Dan, what are you doing?" I tapped the handbook on my desk. "Just following procedure." She groaned. "We're going to drown in this crap." "Better grab a life vest," I said, deadpan. That evening, 3 shipments missed their deadlines. One was bound for a hospital contract, critical medical supplies. When the client called, furious, I calmly explained that, due to compliance, their order was in queue behind a local furniture store. The silence on the other end of the line was priceless. Finally, the rep said, "Put me through to your boss." With pleasure. I forwarded them to Victor's line and leaned back in my chair, grinning. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the one saving this company. I was letting it live exactly by the rules it worshipped. And it was killing them. By day 3, the phones never stopped ringing. Clients who had tolerated our quirks, because I usually smoothed things over, were now furious. One longtime customer actually shouted down the line, "We've been with you for 8 years, Daniel. What the hell happened?" I gave him the same calm, rehearsed answer. Company policy requires that all orders be processed in the exact sequence they arrive. Unfortunately, that means your shipment will not leave until the paperwork for 4 other smaller accounts is cleared. Click. Another contract burned. At lunch, I walked past the conference room and saw Victor sitting at the head of the table, talking over 3 department heads. His voice carried through the glass wall. "We're building discipline. This chaos is temporary. In a week, they'll thank me." Meanwhile, in the warehouse, drivers were waiting 6, sometimes 7 hours just to get unloaded. The line of trucks wrapped around the block. One guy threatened to call corporate himself. Another flat out refused to come back after sitting in the cab all day without pay. Morale inside the building was no better. People were exhausted. I overheard one of the dispatchers muttering, "I used to love this job, now I wake up dreading it." Another whispered back, "Just wait. Either the clients quit, or we do." The breaking point came mid-afternoon when one of our biggest accounts, a national retail chain, called demanding an explanation for why their inventory hadn't been restocked for 3 days. Normally, I'd escalate and clear their shipments immediately. But policy said no priority handling unless approved in writing by upper management. So I smiled into the phone and said, "Let me connect you with our new manager, Victor. He'll be able to explain." 5 minutes later, Victor stormed into my office, face red. "What the hell did you tell them?" I held up the handbook like a shield. "Only the truth. We can't prioritize their order without written approval. Isn't that what you wanted?" For a second, he looked like he wanted to explode. But with half the office staring at him through the glass wall, he swallowed his anger and barked, "Just keep processing the way you're supposed to." "Oh, I will," I said, keeping my face neutral while inside I was grinning. Because the clients weren't just angry anymore. They were walking away. And once the contracts started collapsing, the company wouldn't be far behind. Day 4 started with a bombshell email. 3 major clients had officially pulled their contracts. Just like that, millions in revenue evaporated. Victor tried to spin it in the morning meeting. He stood at the front with his usual smirk, saying, "Some churn is normal. We're just filtering out clients who can't respect procedure. This will make us stronger." Nobody bought it. You could feel the air in the room, heavy, resentful, exhausted. The warehouse was a nightmare. Drivers were refusing to come back, saying it wasn't worth sitting around all day unpaid. One vendor actually parked his truck, tossed the paperwork at me, and said, "Find another carrier. We're done." Normally, I would have begged him to stay, called in a favor, worked some magic to smooth things over. But this time, I picked up the paperwork, stapled it neatly to the back of his file, and filed it under terminated accounts. Rules were rules. The ripple effect was brutal. With fewer drivers, deliveries slowed even more. The backlog doubled. By noon, we had 26 trucks waiting outside and not enough staff to unload them. Warehouse guys started yelling at dispatch. Dispatch yelled at accounting. Accounting yelled at HR. And me. I just sat calmly at my desk, processing everything exactly by the handbook. Around 3 p.m., Victor stormed into my office again. His tie was loose, his face slick with sweat. "Daniel, why aren't you fixing this?" he snapped. I leaned back in my chair. Because according to the rules, only a manager can authorize exceptions. I'm not a manager, remember? His mouth opened, closed, opened again. He looked like a fish out of water. Finally he growled, Just keep doing your job." "Of course," I said with a smile. That evening, I overheard HR in the hallway whispering, "This place is collapsing. Payroll's a mess, clients are gone, suppliers are dropping us. If something doesn't change, we won't last another week." And they were right. Because tomorrow, the dominoes would start falling faster than anyone could stop them. By day 5, the disaster had reached the top floors. Investors were on edge. I knew this because I accidentally overheard a call Victor was having in his glass-walled office. He was pacing back and forth, phone clutched in his fist, saying things like, "temporary turbulence," and "short-term growing pains." Yeah, sure. Tell that to the contracts bleeding out by the hour. That morning, accounting sent a company-wide memo. All non-essential spending frozen until further notice. Translation: no overtime, no bonuses, no new hires. The few workers still holding things together? They just got slapped in the face. By noon, the first audit team arrived. Not some friendly "let's help" group. No, this was the suits. Clipboards, tablets, grim expressions. They started pulling random files, asking for documentation on every shipment that week. And guess what? I had it. Perfectly documented, exactly as the handbook required. Stacks and stacks of paper trails, all showing precisely why everything had slowed to a crawl. An auditor glanced at me and said, "These forms, they're dated 3 days before approval signatures. Why the delay?" I leaned back in my chair. Because policy requires 3 approvals before processing. It takes time. His eyebrows shot up. 3 days. Sometimes 4, I said innocently. The look on his face told me he already knew. This wasn't sustainable. Later that afternoon, Victor called an all-hands meeting. His voice cracked as he tried to sound confident. "I know this week has been challenging, but we are building a culture of compliance. Short-term pain, long-term gain." Someone from the back muttered, "What long-term?" Another whispered, "We won't last till Friday." Victor's face reddened, but he plowed on. He ended with, "Remember, follow the rules exactly. That's how we succeed." I bit my tongue to stop from laughing. Because at that very moment, the rules were already pulling the company apart brick by brick. And I wasn't lifting a finger to stop it. By the start of week 2, the atmosphere was radioactive. People weren't just unhappy anymore, they were done. Monday morning, 3 warehouse guys didn't show up. By lunch, HR sent around a notice, effective immediately, "We are experiencing temporary staffing shortages. Please be patient." Translation: half the team had quit without notice. When Victor found out, he stormed into the warehouse like a general charging into battle. "You can't just walk out," he barked. One of the senior loaders, an older guy named Marco, who'd been here since the company's early days, dropped his gloves on the floor and stared him down. "Watch me," Marco said. Then he walked out. No shouting. No drama. Just gone. And that was the moment the dam broke. By midweek, it was a flood. Dispatchers leaving. Drivers refusing shifts. Even accounting staff resigning on the spot. I heard one girl from HR telling her friend on the phone, "I can find another job tomorrow. Why should I sink with this ship?" Every resignation made the backlog worse. Every backlog made clients angrier. Every angry client pushed us closer to bankruptcy. And the best part? I wasn't doing anything outside the rules. I came in on time, did my job exactly as written, documented everything perfectly. If anyone checked, I was the model employee. Meanwhile, Victor was unraveling. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His tie was always crooked, his eyes bloodshot. He kept calling emergency meetings where he'd rant about loyalty and teamwork, but the more he yelled, the more people tuned him out. At one point, he even tried to corner me privately. "Dan, you've been here a long time. You know how this place works. Can't you just smooth things over?" I raised an eyebrow. "You told me not to cut corners. I'm just doing what you said." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. No answer. And as I watched him stumble back to his office, it hit me. The collapse wasn't coming. It was already here. By Wednesday, the investors had lost patience. Rumors swirled that two of the biggest backers had already pulled out. The company's stock, tiny as it was, plummeted almost overnight. We all found out the same way, an emergency town hall meeting called by the board. They joined over video, stone-faced and grim. One of them, a woman with steel gray hair, didn't mince words. "We've reviewed the numbers. In the last 7 days, this company has lost 40% of its client base. Our delivery rate has collapsed. Cash flow is strangled. If this continues another week, we won't survive the quarter." Victor tried to put on his confident smile. "With all due respect, ma'am, this is just the system working out inefficiencies. In the long run." She cut him off. "There is no long run if you don't have clients." The silence afterward was brutal. Even Victor couldn't spin it. That afternoon, the investors sent in consultants to evaluate operations. They swarmed the building like vultures, digging through paperwork, grilling staff, shadowing departments. Every corner they turned, they found another mess. Orders stuck in limbo, invoices piling up, clients screaming down the phones. And when they asked me why, I always had the same answer. Calm. Professional. Documented. Just following the rules exactly as written. I could see the realization dawning on their faces. This company hadn't been running on policy. It had been running on people like me quietly breaking policy to keep the machine alive. Now that we were gone, or in my case, playing Victor's game, the whole thing was eating itself alive. By the end of the day, one consultant muttered as he passed my desk, "This place is a corpse. They just don't know it yet." And he was right. The only question left was how long before it collapsed completely. By Friday morning, the collapse was undeniable. Half the trucks in the lot were gone. Suppliers had stopped sending them. The warehouse floor was nearly empty, echoes bouncing where forklifts used to hum. Phones still rang, but fewer now, because most of the clients had already cut ties. At 10 a.m., an all-hands meeting was called. Everyone shuffled into the break room, the air heavy with dread. Victor stood at the front, sweating through his shirt, clutching a stack of papers like they were a lifeline. He cleared his throat. "I know this has been a difficult week, but we are restructuring. This is an opportunity to come out stronger." Nobody bought it. The room was dead silent except for the buzz of the fluorescent lights. Then one brave soul, a dispatcher named Kelly, spoke up. "Stronger? We've lost half our staff, most of our clients, and the investors are gone. How is this stronger?" Victor's smile cracked. He opened his mouth, but before he could reply, the door opened. Two men in suits walked in, board members. One of them, the gray-haired woman from the video call earlier in the week, stepped forward. Her tone was ice. "This company is insolvent. Effective immediately, operations are suspended. Staff will be compensated through the end of the week. Further communication will come from legal." The words hit like a bomb. Gasps, shouts, swearing. Someone slammed their fist on a table. Others just stood in stunned silence. Victor looked like he'd been slapped. "No, you can't do this. I was fixing it. If they'd just listened to me." The woman cut him off. "No, Victor. They listened. And that's why we're here." With that, she turned and walked out. The other board member followed. And just like that, it was over. People scattered, some crying, some laughing bitterly, some already calling recruiters on their phones. The company that had pretended to be a powerhouse was gone in less than a week. And me. I just sat quietly at my desk, shutting down my computer for the last time. Because the truth was, I hadn't destroyed the company. Victor had. All I did was give him exactly what he asked for. That evening, I walked out of the office for the last time. The parking lot was almost empty, just a few cars left under flickering lights, like ghosts of the company that used to be. I carried my box of things, a couple of photos, some coffee mugs, my favorite notepad. That was it. 6 years of keeping the place alive, and it ended with me walking out into the cool night air, free at last. My phone buzzed. A message from Victor. Just one line. "You happy now?" I stared at it for a moment, then slipped the phone back into my pocket without replying. Because the truth was, yes, I was happy. Not because the company had collapsed, but because I finally wasn't carrying its dead weight anymore. 4 years, I'd been the invisible glue holding everything together. Management ignored it, clients never knew, and my family barely understood why I worked such long hours. I was the guy bending the rules to make sure the machine didn't grind to a halt. And then Victor came along, puffed up with ego, barking orders about discipline and compliance. He thought rules were the solution. What he never realized was that the rules were the problem. So I gave him exactly what he wanted. I stopped fixing things. I stopped protecting the company from itself. I followed the handbook to the letter, and in 7 days, the whole structure collapsed under its own weight. A week later, I was already interviewing with competitors. When they asked why I left, I just smiled and said, my old company didn't value initiative. I figured it was time to find one that did. They nodded, impressed. One even told me, we need people who know how to get things done, not just follow rules blindly. And that's when it hit me, malicious compliance hadn't just ended my old job, it had set me free to find a better one. As I drove home that night, windows down, I laughed for the first time in months. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't sabotage or payback. It's letting someone's arrogance destroy itself, while you walk away untouched.